All right, Roddy, we're live now. Thank you so much for taking out some time. I appreciate it.
Great, Mike. Thank you.
So I want to jump right in. What was your first exposure to Pink Floyd?
Uh, well, Pink Floyd was the first concert I ever went to.
Ooh, what
Uh,
year?
this is going to date me, but
That's all right. I gotta know.
yeah, no, it was a Pink Floyd on the Animals tour.
Oh, that's freaking
So
awesome. What a
yeah,
great
so
tour.
yeah, so that was the first show I ever went to, and my dad took my friend and I down to Anaheim Stadium. I grew up in LA, was born and raised in LA, and
Sure.
dropped us off at 4 in the morning because it was, festival seating,
Sure.
and basically said, "Hey, I'll meet you here 11 hours from now. Here, road G, section 12." You know, it was like the 70s,
I
but it was,
love it.
yeah, it was amazing. So that, in fact, that was probably, that was the first show I saw, and probably that was the first Pink Floyd record I bought was Animals. I
I
bought that,
was.
believe, before Dark Side of the Moon, I think, even. So, but I love that show. It was amazing. Blew me
Oh
away.
man, such a great album, such a great show. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So, and then how did you meet Storm Thurgerson? How did that happen?
Yeah,
That's
that's well
probably a
that's
cool story.
you got a week and a half.
Yeah, I figured it was a long one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try and condense it. A friend of mine who's a musician who had done music for one of my films, he came to my house in New York and he said, "Hey, I was just in London and I saw my friend Dan who works with Storm Thorgerson." And I said, "Who the hell is Storm Thorgerson? Is it like some black metal singer from Norway?" And he said, "No, he had the company Hipgnosis, did record covers." I was like, "Oh, wow. Yeah, of course." I had, the Pink Floyd stuff and I had Zeppelin records and,
Sure.
some of their designs. And he said, "Yeah, yeah, he's still doing covers." I was like, "Really?" I mean, I had no idea who he was. Number one, his name, no idea he was alive. He said, "Yeah, they went to this beach. It was for this band called Thornley, and they used this bulldozer, dug out these steps, and then they put these trap doors atop, and they went up and they shot a picture of it." And I was like, "Why in the hell would he do that?" Still, like still now with computers. Hello, computers, Photoshop.
I
Uh,
know, right?
and my friend said, "No, man, he still likes to do covers the way he's always done them, like, staging these real events." Uh, and so I kind of got fixated on that idea, and I was working on a narrative film, but then I was like, wow, I couldn't get that image out of my head. So I bought this book. It's been long out of print, called Walk Away Renee, that was
Okay.
about hypnosis in the 70s, and it showed up. And as I was flipping through it, I was like, I had that one, that one, that one, that, and then I got really freaked out. I was like, okay, who's this guy who shaped my teen psyche so much? I mean,
Right?
what is happening here? And so, and I was still making films in 16 millimeter movie film. I was
Sure.
love the quality of the film. Big vinyl record collector, still have a big vinyl record collection. So
Same here.
I was
Yeah.
thinking about all those things, they were kind of percolating, this idea of this guy still doing covers like that. Uh, and so I wrote him a bunch of emails, didn't respond to any of them. And then finally, coincidentally, I told him the story about seeing Animals tour, and he responded to that. He just said, "Hey, Roddy, I'm in Ibiza on holiday, doing a talk in London in 2 weeks. Want to come?" And that was it.
Get
And
out of here.
yeah, so I didn't know him at all. And so I flew to London, and I'll tell the quick version of the story, but I showed up at the studio and he's like, "I can't talk to you. The talk's tonight. Go with my assistants." And we drove around London all day buying heads of cabbages and filling up the car with heads of cabbages, hundreds. And then that night he was doing this lecture at BAFTA, which I think holds like 250 people, maybe something like that. And he had a topless woman getting body painted, eyes on her back. He had a little sort of living room set up, like the thing in the wall, like that, kind of with the light. And he was
Yeah.
projecting images of the artworks and telling stories. And in the middle of the lecture, he stopped the whole thing, and his assistants passed out all the cabbage heads to everyone in the audience. And he set up the camera, his photographer set up the camera, and he directed a photo shoot where they all held the cabbage heads. We all held cabbage heads like this. And I was like, what in the hell is going on? Like, who is this guy? What is going on?
Oh
And
my
then literally
God.
the next day, I went to the studio and he's like, I can't talk to you again, Roddy. Go sit over there. I'm naming a Pink Floyd record. If you've got any good ideas, tell me. You could
Oh
name
my
a Pink Floyd
God.
record. I was like,
How cool is
oh,
that?
yeah. So I sat there, and then at the end of the day, he said, "Come upstairs with me." And he had had a stroke years earlier, so it's just him and I. And he basically made me clean out a room for him. I had to carry down a drafting table, throw it in the dumpster. You know, he had all these waterlogged posters, and so he got me to work for like an hour and a half, like cleaning out this room. And then after that, we had a cup of tea, and then he said, "What do you want to do?" And so I made, it was 2.5 years of making a film on him. That came out. The first screening was in 2011, and it got released in 2013. And during the making of that film, it's called Taken by Storm: The Art of Storm Thorgerson and Hipgnosis. We became really super close. And at a certain point, he said, "Who do you want to interview?" And then all of a sudden, I was interviewing Robert Plant, David Gilmour, Steve Miller, the Cranberries, all these people he had been doing covers for. And we became very tight. And then how it goes to the Sid film is we were screening that film in LA,
Okay.
and this musician Rob Dickinson, who's a friend of ours, who's in the movie, said to Storm, "You should do the film about Sid Barrett." He said to Storm, "Roddy should do the film about Sid Barrett. That hasn't been done." And the next morning at breakfast, I was eating my eggs with Storm and toast, and he said, "What do you know about Sid Barrett, Roddy? What, like, tell me?" And I was like, uh, "Well, man, I was in this band in college, and the bass player loved Piper at the Gates of Dawn, and we would track the record and try and learn the songs, and we could never figure them out because they were so peculiar." So I said, so my first memory of Sid, is really like being frustrated as a mediocre guitar player. And then I said, I really love the solo albums and the lyrics on them and everything. And Storm literally is just, drinking his orange juice. And he said, "Oh, maybe you are the one." And so he basically said, if you want to do a film on Sid, I grew up with everyone. I'll produce it, you direct it. And we met in Berlin, I think a few months later, and we wrote out an outline of who we wanted to interview, what stories we wanted to prove or disprove. And then literally one day, Storm called me up and he said, "Roddy, where are you?" And I said, "I'm in New York, Storm." And he said, "I'm in LA. We're starting the Sid film." And I said, I said, I said, "What?" And what had happened was that Storm had had colon cancer and it had gone into remission, but the
Oh,
cancer had come back. And so basically, and I talk about the film, it was like a sprint and a marathon then. And so he wanted to interview, be involved as much as he could. And he started doing the interviews in London, and he would basically, set up an interview and he'd say, "I'm doing this film, I'm producing it, but the director's in New York, Roddy. I don't know where the hell he is. He could be in Hawaii. He could be, who knows where he is. So I'm doing the interview for him. And look, I'm dying too, So it was
oh
kind
my
of
God.
intense, pretty incredible. So he got to do quite a few of the interviews. We did Roger Waters together. I interviewed Mick Rock, and I interviewed Jerry Shirley from Humble Pie and all these. So it was kind of a mixed bag, but it was really, there was a sense of urgency. But that's my adventures with Storm, which is a whole other chapter.
Right, man. That's wild. Now, obviously, he's been gone now for like over 10 years, which is just crazy to think. So, was it difficult for you to kind of finish the film and get it released to fans?
Yeah, I mean, it was a long process. We looked at an assembly of footage right before he died, and it was a mess. We didn't know what to do. We had a general idea. And so then over that time period, it just started falling into place in different ways. We started getting, I interviewed Sid's sister years later. We got the photographs of Sid at Abbey Road, those
Okay.
images there in the film that no one's ever seen before. So
Right.
it was, all these things started, people started becoming really super generous. And then we tracked down Jerry Shirley. But this was done totally to answer your question directly, it was totally independent film, like
Sure.
no financing from the record label, no financing from music publishing companies. It was basically Storm's old photographer, who's a producer on it, Rupert Truman, and Julius Beltram, who's another producer on the film, doing 2 camera shoots.
Oh my
Um,
God.
so we just, and I would finance my trips over to London. And so it was a long process, but I was doing other films in between, so that's good. Otherwise, I probably would have completely freaked out. But I think it benefited from that in some ways because we were able to re-edit. I think this is maybe the 12th version of the edit.
It's wild. Yeah.
So yeah, so it was a long process. But how long should it take to make a movie about someone's life, right?
Yeah.
How
True.
do we
True.
decide
It's
that?
done in 2 weeks. It's you know that's cool, man. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So I guess when was the interviews done with the surviving members from Floyd? They were done back in 20 before 2013
Yeah, they were
or
done. Yep, they were done about, I would say, 2012. Yeah,
okay, cool, cool,
yeah,
cool.
with David. Yeah, because Roger Storm came over to New York and we interviewed Roger together. So Storm was alive for all the interviews with the Floyd guys.
That's neat. Wow,
Yeah.
that's cool, man. And why did you guys end up choosing the title? Have you got it yet? Which is obviously it's an unfinished song of Sid's.
Yeah.
Why
It's,
did
I
you all
mean,
choose that?
yeah, it's 2 reasons. One of which, it's the one of the mythological stories, right? When Sid knew kind of he was going to get booted out of the band or pushed out of the band, that he showed up at a rehearsal and said, I've written this new song called Have You Got It Yet? And the chorus is, Have you got it yet? And the
No,
rest of the band had to scream out,
no,
no, no, no.
no.
But as he was showing them the song, he would change it every single time. So they never would be able to figure out how to play the song. So he was really taking the piss out of the band, knowing that they were kind of edging him out. And then for me, it was the title of the film, as you're asking, was because no one really knows what happened to him too. So that's kind of the idea, to leave it open ended,
Sure.
in the same way of that song changing. Everybody has some theory of what they think went on. Some people project their own ideas on the thing, but no one knows exactly what happened. So that was the
Sure.
idea around the title.
I love it. That's so cool. And who are you most surprised from that you got an interview with?
Oh, that's a good question. Uh,
Thanks, dude.
somebody that came in pretty late too was Pete Townsend,
Okay,
uh,
cool. Yeah, yeah.
which was kind of amazing. He's friends with my producer Orion Williams,
Okay.
and I got a phone call from Orion, and he said, "Hey, Roddy, I was just having lunch with Pete. The Who's playing a bunch of shows in L.A." And he said, "I'm really pissed at you, Orion. Why aren't you putting me in your film about Sid Barrett?" And and
Get
Orion
out of
said,
here.
yeah, he said, the Who are going and they're doing a couple of shows in Northern California. Then they're going to be back here Tuesday. Can you get a ticket? I was like, oh yeah, hell yeah, I'm going. And
Sure.
so, Pete, as I thought about it, I mean, I'm a big Who fan, and he was a big inspiration to me as a guitar player when I was young. But, Pete saw Pink Floyd with Sid, in the mid 60s, so he was kind of the testimony of what they were like live. He told us, he's like, yeah, I took Eric to see Jimmy and blew his mind with that. So I said, I thought I'd take Eric to see Sid, do the
Oh
same
my
thing.
God. That's cool.
Um, but so that was kind of amazing, and Pete, I realized, coming out of art school, right, and also the noise stuff with the just smashing up the gear, there was some kinship with kind of the improvisation and the auto destruction and noise, kind of stuff within the pop song, and then also Pete turned to Eastern religion, pretty early on, which a lot of those guys in Cambridge were following Saint Matt, also too. So there's kind of weird, interesting strands between them. But I didn't expect, Pete wasn't on the list, wasn't on our radar, and then he said, "I need to be in this movie." But amazing, just totally amazing. Sat with him for 4 hours. Just great. Hopefully we'll do a deluxe Blu-ray at some point that'll have more interview stuff with him, because he was just fantastic.
Yeah, I was gonna actually ask you, one of my questions was how many hours of interviews do you think you collected?
Oh God, I have no clue. A lot.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, it was shot with digital video, and so with
Right.
digital video, you just tend to shoot too much, you know.
Sure.
And you might record for 2 hours and get like a minute worth of good stuff, but
Right. Sure.
so there's a lot of material for sure. There's some scenes that I tried to put together, didn't end in the film. Um, Storm actually did some kind of reenactments that aren't in the film.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, did a reenactment with Peter Jenner, faking that he's on acid, trying to park a van at the Ali Pali show. So there's some kind of cool stuff, but didn't make sense to put it into the movie.
It's wild, man. That's cool. So, I mean, obviously, it's probably safe to say that Pink Floyd's one of your favorite bands, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, do you have a track that you like immediately go to in the morning or like when you start listening to music for your day?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I used to do that until I had a kid.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
blasting, yeah, I was one of those people that had to have, the wake up song of some sort of track, whatever it is,
Sure.
or through the years. I mean, it's a tough one because I'm not one of those Pink Floyd fans that thinks like I like this period better than this period or this period,
Sure.
For me, part of the interest is how they changed,
Oh yeah.
throughout their sort of stuff. Um, I mean, strangely enough, I was laying in bed and I had a little headphone thing. I couldn't sleep, and I listened to "Shine On You, Crazy Diamond,"
Sure.
and I
It's a
drifted
go-to of mine. Yeah.
drifted away. Yeah, it's such a beautiful song. But there's a lot of great songs. There's stuff on the wall I love. I mean, there's tons and tons of good stuff.
Oh
I can't
man.
say one.
I dig it. No, it's that's cool. Shine On for me is definitely a go-to when I'm feeling them. So so I've seen plenty of documentaries where they don't use the subject's music. You know what I mean? How important for you was it to use, to have like original Floyd and original Sid Barrett tunes in the film?
Oh, it was crucial.
Right.
Absolutely, absolutely crucial. I mean, having said that we weren't sort of backed by any record label, it was kind of amazing that we got everything that I wanted
That's what
in the
I was
film.
wondering.
Yeah,
It's
no, so
probably hard.
it was one of the EPs is Paul Losby, who is David Gilmour's manager and
Okay.
manages the Sid Barrett estate. So
Okay.
and they had known my film on Storm, so
Right.
everybody, I kind of had a little bit of a relationship with everybody involved. But
Okay.
but ultimately, I mean, you're right. The music's key,
You're right.
to hear moments of Sid and Pink Floyd. I mean, imagine doing a film about Sid Barrett but not having "Shine On You, Crazy Diamond." Forget it. That would be the
That's what I
Titanic.
mean. But I've seen
Yeah,
documentaries where there hasn't been like the same kind of tunes, like they
yeah,
either cover it or do someone else, or
yeah. No, it was really key for me to have that music, and I have to say, everybody in all the camps were totally supportive. It was phenomenal. And one of the first questions people ask me sometimes are like, how did this film ever get made? You
right,
know?
sure.
But so I feel very fortunate, that everybody was so generous.
And now that the film's in theaters, how do you feel that it's been received from fans? I know you've been to a few screenings in New York where it's screening now and just got held over, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, it got held over for another week. And I'm going out to LA for the West Coast premieres tomorrow.
Um,
It's the audience response has been amazing. I mean, I think it's really hit an emotional kind of note correctly. So many people are responding very, coming up to shaking my hand and with tears in their eyes. The
right.
first Q&A session we had, the moderator of the Q&A had tears in his eyes when he asked the first question, which made me cry, which made me cry. Uh, so I think, it's interesting because it was something that I always wanted was, kind of that emotional response to the story,
Right.
because I think it is a story about friendships. It's a story about, you know, um, the choices you make in your life, what happens, and memory. So I think that that's really, it's somehow has worked on that level, but it's been amazing. I mean, uh, everybody's just been kind of flabbergasted by the response so far.
It's definitely quite emotional, man. Yeah, that's for sure. Um, yeah, so for you, right? What do you enjoy most about directing documentary work? Because, like you mentioned, you did the film Taken by Storm about his art and hypnosis and all that. Um, yeah, so what do you enjoy most about directing that kind of work?
Yeah, I've done narrative works and I've done more personal kind of films. Um, Probably I would say the Storm film, it was just like I was saying earlier, it was an interesting kind of way to think about how music has changed, right? In our culture so fast with digital technology. And so I thought that I couldn't be the only person that has this feeling about like missing sitting around going like, "Hey, listen to this song," and putting a record on, right? I thought I
Right, sure.
couldn't be the only one that had that. So, for me, documentary films are interesting because of that kind of real nonfiction component. Um, so it's a way, but it's always been a way for me to think about talking about other things too.
Sure.
So my editor Karen Skloss, who's a co-producer and editor on the Sid film, she once said to me, she's like, "What do you want out of this movie? Like, what do you want the audience to think about?" And I said, "Well, Karen, when they watch my film on Storm, I want somebody to think about a record they used to have, run home, and get really pissed off when they realize their boyfriend or girlfriend stole it 20 years ago."
Yeah.
And she laughed exactly like you. She said, "I get it. Okay, this
That's
is great. This
great.
is yeah, this is the kind of response that I always hope for, with my movies."
I dig it, man. And what can we expect from you next? Is there something else on the horizon to keep an eye out for? Or,
The,
yeah.
yeah, there's a bunch of different things. Some music related, some not. But
Oh, cool. Right on.
we'll see what happens. I mean, it's really, for me, as an independent filmmaker, it's like which one gains the most heat first, right?
Right.
And then see what follow. But they've extended the theatrical run of this film to through September now, so it's
Brilliant.
a little bit
So
bonkers.
awesome.
Yeah,
So, yeah. And like I mentioned, it's coming out by me. I'm in Orlando, Florida. So
great.
it's coming right at theater right by me. So I'm going to go hit at that on in August.
Great. So what you have to do, Mike, is you have to go a little early. First of all, bring a bunch of friends, but go a little
You
early,
know it.
and you go up to the theater manager. You go like, "Hey, Roddy, the director has told me you have to turn this up to 11."
You know
And
it,
say,
man. That's an easy request.
and say this comes straight from the director's mouth.
It's so funny. Yep. And I have proof, right?
Yes.
All
Yeah.
right, cool, man. That's awesome. Well, listen, I thank you so much for taking out some time. This has been a blast. And I'll be getting the word out about this film as much as I possibly can.
Great, Mike. Thank you very much.
All right,
Really
my man.
appreciate it.
Take care.
Cheers.